A single question. That's all it took to bring a high-level congressional hearing to a complete standstill. Not a complicated legal theory, not a long speech, just a simple yes or no. And yet, when that question was asked, the room shifted. The energy changed. Because what followed wasn't an answer, it was something else entirely. Something that left people wondering what was really being protected, and WHO.IT started quietly, almost too quietly for what it would become.
Nadler's question has not yet been answered, but I want to start by asking that out of respect for the American public and the Epstein survivors, some of whom, of course, are here today, that we can have a transparent conversation and get the public the answers they deserve. I want to briefly direct your attention to two documents I'm hoping we will put up on the screen. In the first, an individual emails Jeffrey Epstein asking whether a woman identified as M was pro or civilian, and Epstein responds that she was a civilian, Russian, and fun. In the second email, Epstein writes to Steve Tisch about a Ukrainian girl, noting that she was, quote, a little freaked out by the age difference and stating that he would try to convince her not to return to Ukraine. He then instructs Mr. Tisch to call him, adding, I don't like records of these conversations. So I'd like to ask a straightforward question that really is either a yes or no answer. Do these emails constitute credible evidence, not proof, but credible evidence warning further investigation into whether Steve Tisch was involved in Epstein's criminal conduct? Do you think yes or no?
I'm not going to play a yes-no game with you, but I will answer the question to the best of my ability. As I said, we will look and investigate any case involving any victim. I'm not familiar, there were 3 million pages, of course, with that email, but of course, we will look into anything. The documents have been released, 3 million, the redacted versions, we left them open for all of you to come view. Have you? I believe you view them. If not, will you have some copies?
I'd like to.
Can I finish, please? I'm not being rude, please.
I only have 5 minutes.
No, yeah, and I only have 30 seconds based on your filibustering.
Well, you didn't give a yes or no answer, so let me just go further. Director Patel testified in this committee room that there was no credible information indicating that Epstein trafficked victims to anyone else. And glancing at the documents, that proves that's not the case. In July, your department issued a memo stating that it had conducted an exhaustive review of the Epstein files and concluded that no additional individuals would be charged. So I did go over to the Department of Justice yesterday. I would note that 400 and all our 35 members are in the House, and there's 4 computers. So it would take many months to actually have the time. I only had a few hours. I think the transparency argument is really kind of a sham because it's not really possible.
Whoa. Did you have to wait to get a computer?
It is not possible to really go in. I did, however, see a U.S. attorney information for the Southern District of New York indicating that there were additional survivors and probable co-conspirators. Other members of Congress have uncovered likely co-conspirators whose names were blocked out. Now, the Epstein File Transparency Act, which all but one member of this House voted for and the president signed, requires the department to release everything except that it needs to be redacted to protect the victims or an ongoing prosecution, which apparently there is none from the testimony we have received. I am concerned that this act has not been fully complied with. When Director Patel came to the committee, he admitted that up to 1,000 FBI agents had gone through the files and redacted President Trump's name from them. And it's pretty clear that what has been transmitted from the FBI continues to redact President Trump's name, even though he is mentioned, thousands of times in these files. So I think the credibility of the department in terms of complying with the act has been damaged. And I think the department's credibility has been damaged in other ways. I think we all saw the horrible video of American citizens being killed by ICE agents in Minneapolis. And I think how the department has handled these cases raises a lot of doubt about the department. State and local police in Minnesota got a court order to get access to the crime scene to be sure evidence would be properly preserved by federal agents. But they took the agents defied the court order, and in a departure from general policy, the DOJ is not collaborating with state and local law enforcement on these homicides. So I really think that is a disgraceful approach to the homicides of American citizens, and really does nothing to bring credit to your department. And Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.
May I answer?
Attorney General can respond.
I find it interesting that she keeps going after President Trump, the greatest president in American history. And if they could maintain their composure, this isn't a circus, this is a hearing. I find it interesting she keeps going after Donald Trump. She doesn't say how much money she took from Reid Hoffman, did you? None. And nor did
Mr.
she
Chairman,
post
regular
anything.
order, please.
She
Regular order.
posted nothing on her X account,
Gentlelady.
on her Twitter account during the Biden years.
Gentlelady.
Yet now,
there
all
was
of
no
a sudden,
question
she's
asked.
going after
Committee will be in
Point of
order.
order. There was no
Committee will
question
be in
asked of
order.
the Attorney General. She doesn't just get to speak.
Committee will be in order.
I have a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Committee will be in order.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady can state her point of order.
When a witness attacks,
Not a valid point of order. You got to state.
She hasn't completed her point of order
haven't
yet.
got
Please
a
let her
side-
speak, Mr. Chairman. Let's have some regular order here.
Regular order is you got to state the rule. And she
I am
didn't do it.
trying to make a point of order that the witness,
And what
without,
rule are you referring to?
without responding to a question, has attacked me personally. I think it's pathetic that she can't answer the questions and
First
instead
time
is
that
attacking
is not even close
members
to a
of the
point of
committee.
order. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Zoe Lofgren wasn't raising her voice. She wasn't interrupting. She wasn't trying to score political points. That's not her style. For decades, she's built a reputation on being methodical, precise, and focused. When she speaks, it's usually because she has something specific in front of her. And on that day, she did. She held up 2 emails. Just 2. No stack of papers, no overwhelming flood of evidence. Just enough to make a point. But what was inside those emails would change the tone of the entire hearing. Because this wasn't about speculation anymore. This was about documentation. Real words, real exchanges, and names that carry serious weight. The first email seemed almost casual on the surface. A message asking whether a woman was pro or civilian. And the response? Short, direct, and unsettling. She was described as a civilian, Russian, and fun. Not exactly language you'd expect in a normal conversation. It hinted at something deeper, something coded, or at the very least, something that didn't sit right. And that alone raised eyebrows. But the second email, that's where things took a sharp turn. This one wasn't vague. It was direct. It referenced a Ukrainian girl. It mentioned concerns about age difference. And then came the line that stuck with everyone in that room. The writer said he would try to convince her not to return to Ukraine. And then, almost as an afterthought, but really, the most important part, he added a simple instruction. Call me. Because, as he put it, I don't like records of these conversations. That wasn't just unusual. That was intentional. That was someone actively trying to avoid documentation. And in a case already surrounded by secrecy, that kind of language carries weight. Because it suggests awareness. Awareness that what's being discussed shouldn't be written down. Awareness that there's something to hide. And then came the name tied to that email, Steve Tisch. A billionaire. A public figure. Someone far removed from the kind of scrutiny usually associated with these cases. Suddenly, this wasn't just about the past. It was about potential connections that hadn't been fully explored. But that's when Lofgren asked the question. And it was as precise as it gets. She didn't accuse. She didn't speculate. She didn't jump to conclusions. She asked something very specific. Do these emails constitute credible evidence? Not proof, just credible evidence that would warrant further investigation? Yes or no. It should have been straightforward. In oversight hearings, that's a standard kind of question. It doesn't determine guilt. It doesn't demand immediate action. It simply asks whether something deserves a closer look. That's it. But instead of a yes or a no, there was hesitation. Pam Bondi leaned in, but not to give a direct answer. She started talking around the question. She said she wouldn't play a yes or no game. She mentioned the sheer volume of documents, millions of pages. She said she wasn't familiar with that specific email, and she assured the room that any case involving victims would be looked at. On the surface, it sounded like a response. But it wasn't an answer, and Lofgren knew it. You could hear it in her voice when she tried to bring the focus back. She reminded everyone she had limited time. She wasn't asking for a speech. She just needed clarity. But the answer never came. Not clearly. Not directly. Not in the way the question demanded. That moment alone would have been enough to raise concerns. But it didn't end there. Because what came next made the situation even more complicated. Earlier in the same room, Kash Patel had testified that there was no credible evidence suggesting that Epstein had trafficked victims to other individuals. None. That was the official position. A clear statement meant to close the door on further speculation. But now, with those emails sitting in plain view, that statement didn't seem to hold up. Because what Lofgren presented wasn't abstract. It wasn't theory. It was communication that directly referenced other individuals. It used language that suggested involvement. It implied connections. So which was it? Was there no credible evidence? Or had something been overlooked? That contradiction hung in the air. And once it was there, it couldn't be ignored. But even that wasn't the biggest issue, because then the conversation shifted to transparency. The Department of Justice had claimed it conducted an exhaustive review of the Epstein files. Millions of pages. Years of investigation. And the conclusion? No additional individuals would be charged. That's a strong statement. Exhaustive review suggests nothing was missed. Nothing left unexplored. Everything accounted for. But Lofgren decided to check for herself. She went to review the files. And what she found wasn't what you'd expect from something described as transparent. There were hundreds of members of Congress, but only a handful of computers available to access the documents. Limited time, limited access. Practically impossible to go through everything in any meaningful way. And yet, even with those restrictions, she found references to additional survivors. She found mentions of probable co-conspirators. Names that had been blocked out. In just a few hours. So, if that's what could be uncovered in such a short window, what else was in there? And how could an exhaustive review conclude there was nothing more to pursue? That's when the credibility question started to grow, because transparency isn't just about releasing documents. It's about making them accessible. It's about allowing proper review. And if the system makes that nearly impossible, then the word transparent starts to lose its meaning. But then came the claim that shifted everything into a different level. During testimony, it was revealed that up to 1,000 FBI agents had been involved in processing these files. 1,000. That's not routine. That's not standard. That's a massive operation. And according to what was said, a significant part of that effort involved redacting a specific name. A name that appeared thousands of times in those documents. Donald Trump. The implication was clear. While certain details were being removed, ostensibly for privacy or legal reasons, there was a focused effort on specific references. And that raised a difficult question. What determines what gets hidden and what stays visible? Because at the same time, there were concerns that victim identities had not been fully protected. That sensitive information had slipped through. So on one side, you have powerful names being heavily redacted. On the other, victims potentially exposed. That imbalance doesn't sit well, and by this point, the hearing had reached a boiling point. When it came time to respond again, Bondi didn't return to the emails. She didn't address the contradiction. She didn't clarify the redaction issue. Instead, the tone shifted completely. She began praising Trump, calling him the greatest president in American history. She questioned Lofgren's motivations. She brought up campaign donations. She referenced political affiliations. It wasn't a legal response. It wasn't even a policy defense. It was personal. And that's when the tension broke. Lofgren pushed back. She pointed out that instead of answering the question, she was being attacked. She called it out directly. Because at that moment, the issue wasn't just about emails or documents anymore. It was about accountability. When a straightforward question can't get a straightforward answer, people start asking why. When evidence is presented and met with deflection, it raises doubts. And when those doubts pile up, they don't just go away. They grow. By the end of the exchange, the facts were still there. The emails existed. The question had been asked. The answer had not been given. The contradiction remained unresolved. The transparency concerns were still hanging. Nothing had been cleared up. And that's what made the moment so powerful. Not what was said, but what wasn't. Because sometimes, the most revealing part of a conversation is the silence where an answer should be yes. Oh, now the bigger question isn't just about those emails. It's about what happens next. Will there be further investigation? Will those contradictions be addressed? Or will this become another moment that fades without resolution? That's what people are watching for now. Because this story isn't finished, and if you want to stay updated on developments like this, where power meets accountability and the unanswered questions matter just as much as the answers, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.